Hi, everyone. On behalf of the Southeast New England Program Network, welcome to our webinar titled Combined Sewer Overflow, Oh No, an Introduction to CSO and What It Means for the Blackstone River, brought to you by the Blackstone Watershed Collaborative, the Narragansett Bay Commission, and the Massachusetts Rivers Alliance. My name is Leah Soloway from the New England Environmental Finance Center, and I'll be managing logistics for today's program along with Stephanie Covino, SNEP Network Partner with the Blackstone Watershed Collaborative. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce and provide you all with a little background about the SNEP Network. The SNEP Network's mission is to empower communities to achieve healthy watersheds, sustainable financing, and long-term climate resilience through the management of stormwater and restoration projects. The SNEP Network focuses on building local capacity by providing no-cost trainings, webinars, and technical assistance to communities in the SNEP region. If you'd like to learn more, please visit our website, snepnetwork.org. And before we begin the webinar, there are a few logistics to keep in mind. First, everyone will be on mute to ensure audio quality. At the end of the webinar, there will be a Q&A session. You'll be able to ask questions by typing them into the Q&A box on your Zoom control panel. We look forward to answering questions, so please type your questions in at any time. And on that note, I'd like to hand things over to Stephanie.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad to be here today. I'm just gonna start our slideshow here. So my name is Stephanie Covino. I'm the Executive Director of the Blackstone Watershed Collaborative, and we have worked throughout the Blackstone Watershed, which runs from Worcester, Massachusetts down to Pawtucket, Rhode Island, including with the Worcester Sewer Division and the Narragansett Bay Commission's wastewater treatment plant operators. We do have representation today from the Narragansett Bay Commission. I should note that the city of Worcester was invited to participate and speak today, but they declined to participate, but we wanted to make sure that we shared this information about combined sewer overflow. Just making a note that if Worcester is in the audience, we welcome your comments, we welcome your clarifications or added information. So just a quick overview of our run of order of things today. First, we will have Alicia Taha speaking about combined sewer overflow kind of 101. What is this topic? Giving us a good background. And then Kaylee McLaren, our restoration manager, will talk about the city of Worcester. Catherine Kelly from the Narragansett Bay Commission will speak about Pawtucket and Central Falls. And then Catherine Lang from Mass Rivers will talk about resources. We will leave time at the end for Q&A. So like Leah said, please put your questions into that Q&A box and we'll get to them. We have to have some positive pictures in here as well, not all negative doom and gloom. So here are some lovely cows on the Blackstone River, which maybe is a different form of sewage in the river. So with that, I will introduce Alicia Taha. She's the documentary author of New England's Unseen Environmental Threat, Combined Sewer Overflows. So I'll stop sharing and go ahead, Alicia.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Let me start my share. All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Taha, and I am a recent graduate from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. For the last year, I've worked with Professor Spector in the Political Science Department on a faculty-student collaborative research project on combined sewer overflows. Throughout our project, we were able to interview some incredible people in the space. Stephanie Covino and Catherine Lang were just two of those amazing people. And the goal of this project was to bring awareness to the issue of CSOs. And additionally, we wanted to create something that would be digestible to anyone looking to learn about CSOs and how it may affect them and their community. A large focus of our project was the effects of combined sewer overflows on environmental justice populations. And through our numerous conversations with people in the space, we learned that public knowledge would be the first step in driving any possible policy change for combined sewer overflows, which is a perfect segue into my portion of this presentation, which starts off with, what is a combined sewer overflow? Well, many Massachusetts cities operate under a combined sewer system. Within a combined sewer system, rainfall runoff, domestic sewage, and industrial wastewater is all collected within one pipe and transported to a local wastewater facility. On a dry day, as the picture on the left displays, the system works as it was intended. So we can see that in this instance, there's no stormwater entering the pipe and wastewater is transported from the building to the wastewater treatment plant where they can treat the water and then it goes out as a clean discharge. But on wet days with large or even smaller storms, that system can completely break down. During these days, the storm and wastewater exceeds the capacity of the pipe, as well as the volume of water that wastewater facilities can treat, which forces them to discharge untreated and or partially treated wastewater into nearby rivers. Of course, this is a preventative action to avoid flooding into houses and streets. When I talk about this, what I usually find a lot of people have a really hard time wrapping their head around is that this mechanism was actually built into the system when it was made, but what they couldn't have foreseen at the time was the precipitation patterns that affect us today. So this is a map created by Mass DEP of combined sewer outfall locations in Massachusetts, and circled are the 3 areas that we focused on in our research project, which were towns and cities that bordered the Connecticut River, the Merrimack River, and the Blackstone. This map will actually come back later in this presentation when we look at the Massachusetts Environmental Justice Population Map. So, how will climate change worsen CSOs? Well, when we started our research, it was during the summer of 2023 when we were seeing record-breaking numbers of CSO activity, which of course was directly correlated to the record-breaking number of rain events that summer as well. So what we can expect to see, and I actually quote from Catherine here, we are seeing more precipitation. It's coming in heavier, flashier events, which completely overwhelm our wastewater facilities. These facilities were not built for the precipitation we are getting today, and they're certainly not built for the trends that we are expecting to see in the future. And here are some metrics from the summer of 2023. This first bit we learned from John McCone at Merrimack River Watershed Council. So in the 61-day period of June and July, 28 of those days, CSOs occurred in the Merrimack River. And 39 of those days, Merrimack was under a 48-hour no primary contact advisory. And this was happening during arguably our most prominent time for recreation in the area. That summer, I was also able to attend a CSO facility tour, thanks to Stephanie. And what we learned there was, on average, at that facility, there would be 12 CSO discharges in a whole entire year. But in July alone, there had already been 7 CSO discharges. So what we can see here is that if we're predicting that one of climate change's major effects will be the increased frequency and scale of precipitation events, we will also see those numbers increase for CSOs as well. And in terms of water quality and public health, when we started our research project, we didn't see much research done in the local area on the public health effects of combined sewer overflows. From a few of our conversations, we learned that direct contact with our rivers after CSO activity could cause skin rashes, gastrointestinal illnesses, eye and ear diseases, and many other health problems, but we didn't have a ton of really concrete data on this. John McCone also mentioned how we weren't just seeing this happening to people, but to animals as well. There were many instances where dogs were getting rashes after playing in the Merrimack River, and that really showcased to me how important more literature on the issue really was, which is why I was very excited to see that in May of this year, Boston University's School of Public Health released this article on the linkage between interactions with the Merrimack River and developing gastrointestinal illness. This new study found that the risk of developing this illness was significantly higher for communities that bordered the Merrimack River, showcasing that this wasn't necessarily a drinking water source problem, but a recreational problem due to the exposure of sewage-associated pathogens. I thought this article was so powerful because it highlighted sewer overflows as the cause for this heightened increase and focused on the communities that were heavily affected. And many of these communities actually fell into the category of an environmental justice community. Here, I'm comparing the combined sewer outfall map with the environmental justice map, and I've circled the 3 locations that we focus on again. And what we can see is that the areas with sewer outfalls are also EJ communities. I know later in this presentation, we'll talk more about possible solutions for combined sewer overflows. But I do think it's worth mentioning that sewer separation is extremely costly. And many of the communities that are burdened with this environmental issue would also be the ones burdened with the extremely hefty price tags of these large infrastructural projects. And lastly, I just wanted to highlight the documentary that I made from this year-long project. I wanted to give a huge thank you to Stephanie, Catherine, John, James Plummer from Nui Pick, and Kelsey Wentling, previously from Connecticut River Conservancy. They all made this film possible, and I'm really happy that it can now be used as an educational piece to get people involved and also to just learn more about their wastewater system as a whole and how combined sewer overflows may be affecting them. Later on, I can send out a link to the trailer in the chat for anyone who might be interested. And the full documentary is currently housed on Blackstone's CSO page, and some shorter clips from the documentary will also be housed on Mass River's page as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alicia. And I also put a link direct. You can see it at the Blackstone's Collaborative's CSO page. I welcome you to check that out as well. But you can also check it out directly at that link. So let me just share back my screen here and go back to a slideshow. Perfect. So I just wanted to mention, this, like Alicia said, this isn't just the Blackstone. Well, it's not even just Massachusetts. So this affects a lot of different communities nationwide, dozens, if not hundreds, particularly in our older communities like New England. So these are just 2 images of the 1920s and the 1880s of when we built these sewers. We were so excited. We did a good thing. We took sewage off the streets. We channeled it somewhere else. I think the street smelled a lot better after we installed sewers, but by putting that sewer and stormwater together in one pipe, we also created a lot of problems that we now have to deal with. There are different ways to address CSO, and I won't go into this in detail, but just to kind of break it out into 3 different categories. One is separation of your pipes. One is adding decentralized green infrastructure or sometimes gray infrastructure in a lot of different places to kind of take that stormwater out of the system to allow more room for that one pipe for that stormwater and sewer to go. And then the last is creating a very large, more centralized holding area to take a lot of that stormwater out, wait until the storm passes, and then be able to send it into the wastewater treatment facilities. So in Boston, for instance, they estimated that it's about $340,000 per acre to treat this, to separate their system. In 2021 alone, they spent $30 million, and they have plans to separate East Boston and South Boston, about 20,000 acres or so, and that's only 3% of their sewer system between 2024 and 2029, and this is costing millions. And then in New York City, they have spent also millions of dollars on all of these different decentralized projects, including things like tree box filters, porous concrete, adding adding storage underneath things like basketball courts and sidewalks. So there's a lot of different ways to solve this particular problem. And next, I'll let Kaylee talk about what's going on in Worcester. So Kaylee McLaren is the restoration manager at the Blackstone Watershed Collaborative. Kaylee.
Great, thanks so much, Steph. Yeah, so I'm Kaylee. I'm going to be talking about CSO specifically in Worcester. So the facility that treats the City of Worcester's wastewater is called Upper Blackstone Clean Water, and it's one of New England's largest wastewater treatment plants or clean water facilities. It's also referred to because their product is clean water, which I love. Um, so it serves around roughly 250,000 people in the greater Worcester area, and it discharges directly to the Blackstone River in Millbury, Massachusetts. So the water that leaves the facility is actually much cleaner than the river itself. So in this picture, we can kind of see that, right? Where the treated water on the left meets the Blackstone River on the right, and the treated water is a lot clearer than the river itself. The city of Worcester constructed a unique CSO treatment facility in 1984, and this facility usually acts as a regular pump station to Upper Blackstone Clean Water. So as a reminder, the waste flows via gravity to the lowest points in the city, and then it's pumped upward to get to the next leg of its journey via gravity. And then eventually it reaches a wastewater treatment facility. However, during extreme rain events, when we have the infrastructure that can't handle the water volume coming in, the CSO treatment facility can hold water until there's more capacity, or it can partially treat the water and release it into the Blackstone River. And then in very extreme rain events, the CSO treatment facility might have to bypass and discharge untreated CSO water directly to the Blackstone, but that's pretty rare. And the total length of the CSO pipe is only about 7% the total length of the sewer pipe in the city. And here we also have a map of where the CSO treatment facility is and where the CSO outfall is in relation to the rest of the city. The CSO treatment facility has a partial treatment process where the water coming in gets screened, settled, chlorinated, and then dechlorinated. So the goal is for solids to settle and be removed, and then bacteria are removed via chlorination, and then the dechlorination process makes the water safe to enter the river without killing fish or other biodiversity. So there are 4 scenarios that can happen at the CSO treatment facility. The first is the dry weather scenario. So during dry weather, the CSO treatment facility acts as a regular pump station, and sewage gets pumped to Upper Blackstone Clean Water. So no water is being held or treated at the CSO treatment facility in this scenario. The second scenario is a minor storm, and the facility operators are confident that the rain will end quickly and have little accumulation. So since we're in New England, that's definitely a tough one to be confident in. But the water coming in gets partially treated through that process of screening, settling, chlorination, and dechlorination, and then the water is held in storage tanks within the CSO facility and then pumped to Upper Blackstone when they have the capacity to receive the water. So this scenario is not very common. And then the third scenario is a CSO event where the water is partially treated by the CSO treatment facility by that same process of screening, settling, chlorinating, and dechlorinating the water, and then it's discharged to the Blackstone River. So when this happens, the City of Worcester sends out an alert via an email list and their website to let the public know that there was a CSO event and you should avoid contact with the water for 48 hours in the communities of Worcester, Millbury, Grafton, and Sutton. So you can sign up for those alerts with this link. I will drop it in the chat right here, just in case you're interested. And then the fourth scenario is an untreated CSO event. So when very intense rainstorms cause catastrophic flooding, the facility can't handle that much water, and to protect both the pumps and the station itself from going underwater, it shuts down. So the water just bypasses the facility and goes untreated to the Blackstone. So at this point, Upper Blackstone is also overwhelmed and can't effectively treat the volume of wastewater that's coming in. And there's already flooding in the street from that much water backing up into the lowest lying areas. And because this is the combined sewer area, that flooding has CSO in it. There are also rare scenarios where, due to failure of equipment, water bypasses the facility and releases untreated flows to the Blackstone. So this has happened in the past due to a system error with the gauges at the facility, as well as when the facility ran out of chlorine to treat the water. So chlorine loses its potency over time, and because Worcester is a small facility, the distributor failed to deliver it on time before an event. And I'll also note here that the treatment plant operators, both at the CSO facility and Upper Blackstone, work all hours when they're needed during a storm to monitor equipment and help ensure that we have a healthy river and an environment. So they are true stewards of the river. We know that climate change is occurring in the Blackstone watershed, and we can expect more frequent and intense rainstorms. So the Worcester CSO facility generally has about 12 to 15 CSO events in a year, but in 2023, there were 30. And we know that large storms with a lot of heavy precipitation at once are anticipated to continue and increase over time because of climate change. And this trend of increased CSO events will likely continue. So CSO affects local communities at two different scales. When we have a CSO event partially treated or completely untreated, communities downstream of the CSO outfall are advised to avoid contact with the water for 48 hours after the event. And this advisory applies to Worcester, Millbury, Grafton, and Sutton, since the CSO is diluted as it travels down the Blackstone River. But we do, however, advise that people don't have contact with the water for 24 to 48 hours after a large rainstorm anyway, since stormwater runoff generally makes waterways less clean. So that's what you're seeing on the left map here is this, how the CSO travels down through these communities. However, when we have catastrophic flooding and an untreated CSO event, the flood water in the streets is contaminated and it accumulates at the lowest point, which includes around the CSO treatment facility. So while these large rainstorms mean that the CSO is heavily diluted and it's mostly rainwater and runoff, it could still pose a potential health concern for the local community in this neighborhood, which is called Green Island, and it's an environmental justice community. So while these don't happen often, we do need additional studies and information to clarify the health impacts of untreated CSOs during these storms. So as Alicia mentioned before, there was a study done by Boston University that links gastrointestinal health concerns to CSO events, but we do still need further studies to determine the pathway the potential bacteria will impact, like through air, direct contact, or drinking water. And ideally, the pipes in these areas would be replaced with new separated pipes, but this is very expensive to do. So in 2019, Worcester published the Integrated Water Resources Management Plan, outlining how they can meet the city's sewer, stormwater, and drinking water infrastructure needs within the next 50 years. So the goal of addressing these things together is to make sure that the city and the taxpayers can really just get the best bang for their buck on the many different infrastructure projects that are needed. And since 70% of the city is considered part of an environmental justice population, the goal is to limit ratepayer costs. And the city estimates that state and federal mandates for water resources capital spending over the next 50 years will reach $2.6 billion. So some of the examples of projects identified in the integrated plan include the Green Island Flooding Relief Conduit for $40 million in 2031. So this is the highest scoring capital improvement project within the integrated plan. However, it is just a conceptual plan at this stage. So the plan notes that the final engineering design will consider green infrastructure opportunities and be implemented where it's feasible and cost effective, but it doesn't give much more information beyond that. And another example is the CSO treatment plant upgrades. So some of these have already been made, including updating the bypass gates to more accurately monitor how much flow is being released and to break out how much is treated versus untreated. And this plan also identifies a need for a drainage master plan to explore green infrastructure and other opportunities to reduce flooding. So the drainage master plan is currently in a draft phase, but it's expected to be completed by the end of this year. So the first phase focuses on the separated part of the city. However, reducing stress on the stormwater system and the higher points of the city might also help reduce CSO by freeing up the system for more CSO in other lower lying areas. The city is also working to update their CSO long-term control plan. So stay tuned to learn more about that. The last plan was from 2004, so it'll be really interesting for us to hear what this plan will include, like which projects have been completed and which ones have been added to the priority list to ensure these continued improvements keep happening. And the city recognizes that wet weather impairment should be addressed, and the integrated plan notes that they believe that investments in stormwater controls will yield greater benefits than further investments in combined sewer overflow controls. But we believe that much more investment needs to be made on addressing CSOs, and that there are many steps in identifying the ways to replace pipes and create storage and add green infrastructure to reduce stormwater flows. And we also hope to continue partnering with the city to help improve the public understanding of this issue, which is critical to address it. So we've been working with the Worcester DPW to hold tours of the CSO treatment facility in both 2022 and 2023 to help educate both our partners and the public. So if you're interested in learning more about CSO, especially if you're a Worcester resident, I would encourage you to reach out to your city councilor, to DPW, or to the Sustainability and Resilience Department, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it can be tough to gain support to prioritize something as generally unexciting as sewer overflows without a push from the public to do so. Great. So thanks so much. I'll turn it back to Stephanie.
Thank you so much. And again, I wanted to say a thank you to the Upper Blackstone Wastewater Treatment Facility that I know the director's also in the audience. So that's a part that we didn't include, but if people have questions for her, I maybe voluntold her that she can help out with some of those questions as well. I also wanted to mention, and apologies for not doing this before, that I wanted to give one more acknowledgement to both the Hassamasco Nipmuc Band and the Narragansett Indian Tribe. When the Blackstone Watershed Collaborative was created 3 years ago, addressing CSO was not one of our top priorities. It hadn't come out, but those two Indigenous partners really pushed to say that this is important and we want you to prioritize it. And so I give them full credit for having it be a really important issue that the collaborative is working on. So thank you. Next, I'll introduce Catherine Kelly. She's the Assistant Director of Engineering and Construction at the Narragansett Bay Commission. So I'll stop sharing and I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, can you see my slides?
We cannot.
Okay. You see it now? No.
There we go.
You got
Perfect.
it? Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. All right. Thank you, everyone. My name is Catherine Kelly. I'm the Assistant Director of Engineering and Construction for the Narragansett Bay Commission. I'll just start off by giving you a little bit of background information about NBC. NBC is Rhode Island's largest wastewater authority. We own and operate Rhode Island's two largest plants, the Fields Point facility in Providence and the Buckland Point facility in East Providence. We have 10 member communities in our district. 3 of these member communities, the cities of Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls, are or have combined systems. We have just under 400,000 residents and approximately 7,600 businesses. And just under 60% of our accounts are in Providence and Pawtucket. So NBC's CSO program started in 1992, and planning efforts for the program continued through the 1990s. NBC convened a series of stakeholder meetings during the 1990s to evaluate alternatives for CSO control. And as a result of the input from our stakeholders, we developed a conceptual design for CSO control. In 1998, we established a three-phase program to address CSOs, and we established goals that included significant reductions in annual CSO volumes and shellfish bed closures in Narragansett Bay. And this also, one goal also included the CSO frequencies being less than 4 overflows per typical year of wet weather. So NBC's CSO program was broken up into 3 phases. Phase 1 of the program included construction of a deep rock CSO storage tunnel underneath the city of Providence. That was about 3 miles long, 26 feet in diameter. We also included diversion structures and drop shafts at 8 CSOs, as well as relief structures and a tunnel pump station to pump the flow to Fields Point. Phase 2 of the program included construction of 2 near-surface interceptors along the Woonasquatucket and Seekonk rivers. This would pick up CSO flow from outfalls along these rivers and convey the flow to the tunnel. And we're currently in phase 3 of the program. Again, phase 3 will include construction of a CSO storage tunnel, as well as a tunnel pump station and drop shafts and various near surface facilities to convey flow to the tunnel itself. And this slide essentially describes how a CSO tunnel works. So this pipe depicts an existing CSO outfall along a river. NBC constructs a diversion structure along this outfall pipe to redirect flow through a gate and screening structure. And a gate and screening structure will include bar racks that can capture any large floatables within the flow. The flow continues down a drop shaft through a deaeration chamber where any air entrained in the flow can be released through a vent, and then is conveyed through an adit that's connected to the tunnel. And the whole point is to capture this flow that originally discharged to the receiving water, redirect it to a tunnel, store it in the tunnel until the wet weather event is over and there's capacity at the treatment plant where the flow can receive treatment before being discharged to the plant's receiving water. So phase 1 of the program occurred during the years of 2001 to 2008 and went online, or the tunnel pump station went online in November of 2008. And that was completed at a cost of $360 million. Phase 2 of the program was completed in 2015 at a cost of $197 million. And again, that included those near surface interceptors that picked up flow from CSO outfalls and conveyed to the Providence Tunnel. We also did several sewer separation projects during phase 2 of the program. So we're currently in phase 3 of the program, and phase 3 has been broken up into 4 subphases, 3A through 3D, and this will occur over a 20-year period. The construction of phase 3A facilities is expected to end in 2027, so we're right in the middle of this effort. And construction cost for phase 3A is estimated to be $900 million. The total cost for all of phase 3 is $1.4 billion. So we're addressing most of the flow during phase 3A. And, you know, I think 2 of our largest CSOs are being addressed right now. And, you know, as part of phase 3A, we will be constructing a CSO storage tunnel. This tunnel will be about 2.2 miles long, 30 feet in diameter. We're constructing a tunnel pump station, as well as various drop shafts and consolidation conduits and other near surface facilities that will convey CSO flow to this Pawtucket tunnel. One thing we're doing in phase 3 that we didn't do in earlier phases of the program is the installation of green stormwater infrastructure, or GSI. NBC has committed to spending $40 million on GSI during the 4 subphases, so $10 million during each subphase. So now I'm going to talk about some of our GSI projects that we've done. These are projects that folks at NBC are really proud of, and it's really been a benefit to the community in which we've done this work. So early on in the program, NBC partnered with the city of Central Falls to remediate existing athletic facilities or properties that were found to be contaminated, and rehabilitate these fields and also install green stormwater infrastructure. The first project I'll talk about is the Lewis C. Yip soccer field. About maybe 7 or 8 years ago, this was a property that had been abandoned. It was an abandoned industrial property, was not in use. The city acquired the property via eminent domain and worked with NBC to do a design for green stormwater infrastructure on the property. So GSI on the property included 2 infiltration basins on the north and south ends of the property. We also installed permeable pavers and planting bed filters along the roadway that are adjacent to the soccer field. And this slide shows the resulting soccer field. You have a field in the middle that can be used by the city for its athletic groups. And we have the infiltration basins at the south and the north ends of the field. And flow from the street, we did install catch basins along the roadways, and flow stormwater runoff in the street is now redirected to these infiltration basins instead of the combined sewer. So this was a project that allowed for us to reduce and separate out some stormwater that goes to the combined system right now. And we also provided a new athletic field for the community. This is another great project that NBC participated in, the Maycomber Stadium GSI project. Again, another field that was not in use due to contamination found in the soil. Furthermore, the field had essentially reached the end of its useful life. And I don't think it was used by any youth athletic groups. It may have been used by some adult athletic groups, but it wasn't a good field. It needed some work. So NBC installed infiltration chambers underground, along with a sand filter, and these infiltration chambers were sized to hold, I think it was around 140,000 cubic feet of stormwater runoff, which is about the volume of stormwater runoff generated during a 25-year storm. We connected roof leaders from an industrial facility that was located north of the property to these underground chambers. And we also redirected stormwater runoff from the roadway to these underground chambers. Following completion of installation of the chambers, we constructed the artificial turf field over the chambers. And what you see in the slide here is a field that includes a baseball field, a soccer field, and a football field. And this was a great project for NBC. It looks great. If you go out there, it looks as good as it does in this photo. And it's something that we're all really, really proud of. In addition, it removed a lot of stormwater runoff from our combined system. 25-year storm event is a fairly large storm event to address in one project. So that was a very successful project for us. And then the third GSI project that I'm going to talk about is the Pierce Park GSI project. And this included construction of a basketball court with pervious pavement. Underneath this basketball court, there was an infiltration system that was similar to what was installed at Maycomber Field. So the underground infiltration chambers. Same concept here. We redirected stormwater runoff from the road to these chambers. So it infiltrated to the groundwater table instead of being directed to the combined system where it could contribute to CSO overflows to the Blackstone River. We installed permeable pavers. Another item that we did in this project was we remediated a baseball field. So it's hard to tell, but here's the baseball field right here, and the basketball court is to the north of the field. In the underground infiltration chambers, they did have an overflow in case the chambers filled up, and that overflow goes to a CSO pipe that travels underneath this baseball field. So we had to tear up the field to create this overflow pipe. When we restored the field, we put in an environmental cap over the contamination and rehabilitated the field, and that's now in use, you know, as a baseball field. So, you know, in closing, I'm showing this text that I received from our friend Jim Vandermillen at Central Falls a couple months ago. I think I got this text just before a long weekend. He sent it to a number of us at NBC, just thanking us for our work and mentioning that all fields are in use by the community every night. And it was really great to get this. It was a great way to start a long weekend for me. I think we all worked really hard in some of these GSI projects. There was a lot of coordination, but everyone worked hard and it resulted in a successful project and something that can be used by the community. It's not just a pipe underground that no one sees. It's something that improved water quality and resulted in a great thing for the city of Central Falls. And my family also got to enjoy this field. There's a picture of a night game being played at that field. And this picture on the pitcher's mound is my 10-year-old son, Declan. So we also enjoyed, you know, some of the results of our projects as well. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Stephanie, and thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That's wonderful. I love the personal touch on we use this field too, and the co-benefits there I think are so important. So from here, I will hand it off to Catherine Lang, who's the policy director at the Massachusetts Rivers Alliance.
All right, we are almost live. Oh, you're getting a preview of my slides to come. Okay, beautiful. Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine, calling in today from Somerville, Massachusetts, another community that also has combined sewer overflows, so something we can all relate to. I'm from the Massachusetts Rivers Alliance. If you haven't heard of us, we're a statewide organization in Massachusetts dedicated to protecting and restoring the rivers and streams of our state. We have 86 member groups across the state, all depicted by little dots here. Some of them are even outside the state borders, because as we know, watersheds like the Blackstone go beyond political boundaries. Sewage pollution is a really big deal for us because it is in fact a statewide issue. We have 187 outfalls across the state. Alicia showed that map earlier of all of the little dots. It is an intensely widespread problem. 19 different communities experience sewage pollution from combined sewer overflows, resulting in hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of gallons of sewage pollution per year in our waterways. And as mentioned, with climate change, that's only increasing. The Blackstone certainly is one place that gets it, the Merrimack, the Chicopee, the Connecticut. As you can see, I put the numbers of outfalls per city on the left. It's serious across our state. It's something that all of our cities are grappling with. Mass Rivers was involved in the effort to create the sewage notification program that Kaylee mentioned earlier. That's something that we are really proud of being involved in and are excited to see on the ground now. In all of those cities with combined sewer overflows, you can sign up, just like Kaylee mentioned, for that email, that text alert to let you know when and where there's been an overflow so that you can stay safe and avoid the water for 48 hours in that area. That's the most public facing part of this law, but there's also some other components that we're excited about as well. There's now signage at public access points to waters that might be contaminated by sewage pollution, letting you know that that is a thing, because as we know, a lot of folks don't think about their sewers, don't know what a combined sewer is, or that it might be harmful to their recreation. So there is signage in various languages to reflect the languages spoken by the populations that live there. And there's also, sorry, I'll get to that. There's also an online database now where whenever there's an overflow, that data of how much, where, and when is now recorded online. So if you are a sewage nerd like me, you want to crunch the numbers, you can do that online. That's something we've never had before. Before the law, we were able to say, there is sewage pollution in these areas. We could estimate. Sometimes the utility, like the DPW, would have an estimate of how much was coming out and where and when. But with this requirement now, we have a much clearer picture of the scale of sewage pollution in Massachusetts, which makes talking about it, working towards solutions, much easier when you know the scope of the problem. There certainly has been press since this law was put into effect. A lot of folks who did not know this was designed to work this way, like Alicia was saying in the beginning, we're shocked to find out that we have this kind of medieval sewage system in many of our modern cities now. The immediate impacts of this are for public health, so folks can avoid the water, and even if it's not a river you're typically swimming in with your friends, maybe your dog or your kid kind of splashes around on the banks, making sure that for any use, no matter how big or small, you're aware of the potential risks that sewage pollution poses. But of course, awareness is just the first step. Long term, we certainly hope that increased awareness will lead to policy change, will lead to investments coming from all levels of government towards more modern water infrastructure. The more people that know about the issue, the more people that can be mobilized to work towards a solution and improve our water quality, not only for people, but of course for wildlife as well. It's a public health risk, but it's also makes pretty bad habitat for our aquatic and terrestrial wildlife. There's a picture of that data portal that now you can go online and check out. You can filter by city, by waterway, by date, to get a really specific picture of what sewage pollution is like in Massachusetts, no matter where you live. So I've filtered for the Blackstone for this summer from June 1st to today. I'm still going to call this the summer season for me. But you can see exactly when the sewage overflows occurred and get a picture of, okay, how often is this happening where I live? And of course, this is only the first step of raising awareness. We want to go much further and hope that this is, again, going to mobilize folks to be more vocal about wanting investments in water infrastructure where they live. This is a picture of one of those signs from the city of Springfield. As was alluded to before, the reason why most of these problems still exist is because of the enormous costs of fixing them. These are legacy issues, legacy infrastructure that now with climate change, with higher populations, with our booming cities, we're dealing with in a new way and a more urgent way. The graphs on the left are at this point a decade old estimates, but getting an estimate of exactly how much it's going to cost to build this stuff is really nuanced and kind of hard to do. So this is the most recent estimate we have from a statewide perspective of the gap in funding. And these are just to get things kind of up to compliance, up to current maintenance, to fix problems, let alone do really great forward thinking projects like we just saw from NBC in Central Falls. These graphs are just to get things up to snuff in the state of Massachusetts. So we have a $21 billion gap, including drinking water and wastewater. And if you factor in stormwater, which of course we will in a combined sewer context, that gap doubles. We have billions of dollars between what we have and what we need to make our water infrastructure work for our residents, work for our rivers, and be clean in the face of climate change. On the right is a graph from the city of New Bedford's integrated plan, which is part of their long-term control plan put together. About half of their infrastructure costs looking at are just for combined sewer overflows. So really, this is a significant part of any city's infrastructure planning. CSOs are a big engineering project, as we just saw with that enormous tunnel in Rhode Island. They're serious projects that cost a lot of money, but that's no excuse not to fail to pursue them. It is a high cost. We know that. It is only going to become more expensive as they deteriorate further with these heavier storms and heavier use. So anyone in the audience today, I would implore you to bring up sewage pollution whenever you're talking with your municipal, your state, your federal leaders, because all levels of government are involved in kind of the administration and the funding of these solutions. In some cities, we're seeing a lot of progress happening, and you can just ask on what are those projects? What is happening? Where can I see progress in our city? In other cities, that progress is less apparent, and you can ask, what's the status? What's going on? Most of these are going to have a long-term control plan or an integrated plan, but either way, taking a look at that. What's the timeline? What are the goals? And is your city meeting those goals? Is your city prioritizing sewer and water quality? Sewers are easy to forget about because they're underground and it's out of sight, out of mind, but certainly we know that they are a crucial part of any residential area, any business operation. We need them to function well. So just checking out, is my city investing? Is my city taking this seriously? At the state level, there are grant programs, there is funding available to help with water infrastructure broadly, including green infrastructure. So if you're speaking to your state legislators, asking them, please invest more. The need couldn't be greater. The need is immense. We need to invest more in all of these solutions. The same is true at the federal level. The state revolving fund is the main funding source for these really big water infrastructure projects. The money in that fund is set by Congress. So if you have the chance to speak to your federal delegation, mentioning to them, wow, this is a big issue in my watershed. We really need a lot of money to make progress, to meet the climate crisis, to make sure our water quality is safe for all residents and wildlife. We got to increase that funding. And finally, at an individual level, if you are thinking about all of this, you too could take action outside of talking to your political leaders. Storm drains can look like this on the right. They can get really clogged up. Adopting a storm drain and making sure it's clear of litter and debris can prevent flooding and make sure everything is working properly. For those of you who have dogs, we know that dog waste, unfortunately, is a contributor to water pollution and can be involved when there's a flood, making that contaminated, make sure that's tidy. If you have a basement, making sure you have a backwater valve to keep your own basement and property safe in the event of flooding or an overflow. And in general, if anywhere has a combined sewer or with stormwater flooding in general, avoiding contact with that water for 48 hours. With all of the combined sewer issue, it's a balance of saying these waters can be polluted for a period of time. They're not polluted forever. Still, recreation is definitely possible. You can still canoe, you can still in some places swim, you can fish, but just being smart and aware of those pollution risks and when it's a good time for you to go and engage with the water. You can follow Masterverse for more on this if you're interested in getting involved. We do a lot of advocacy in Massachusetts. So those of you in this northern part of the watershed, feel free to get involved. That's it for me for now.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And the very last thing I just wanted to share. So this webinar is hosted by the SNEP Network, which is part of the New England Environmental Finance Center. And they also have a lot of resources. So I know this is a lot of text here, but basically these are all links, including how to fund stormwater management, thinking about climate resilience, beginner's guide to successful proposals that you want to submit for funding some of these things, innovation strategies. So there's a lot of information here. And we'll share all of these slides out with you afterwards. And then also the New England Water Infrastructure Network can help communities access things like the bipartisan infrastructure law for wastewater, stormwater, other state water revolving funds, et cetera. So they offer a lot of free technical assistance. And we, again, will link you to their website and more information. So thank you so much to all of our speakers today for putting this together, the SNEP Network for hosting us, and also to all of you for participating and learning more about combined sewer overflow in the Blackstone and statewide and region-wide. So we encourage your questions. You can put them into the Q&A down below, and we're happy to answer them for you. So I have a question for some of our panelists. If you think about what is maybe the one thing that you've seen change in a positive way over the past couple of years, and how does that offer an opportunity? I've seen some good things in your slides, so. Catherine, Catherine Lang, can I push that one maybe on you?
Sure. I think people are starting to make more of the connection between climate change and our water infrastructure. You know, traditionally, if your sink runs and your toilet flushes, you're not giving a second thought about the pipes, about your water and sewer. But I think with education about climate change in general, people experiencing in real time heavier storms and localized flooding, people are making that connection between stormwater flooding in general, stormwater pollution, and then combined sewers. So I think the climate angle gives the issue more urgency, and people frankly will care about it more than just some pipes in the ground, and having examples of successful green infrastructure projects. Some like Catherine from NBC shared, having those examples proliferate around the region is really exciting, to point to these rain gardens, these riparian buffers, all of these tiny green infrastructure installations that combined are having a big impact. We can say these projects are possible, they're helpful, and they're effective. So I would say those two things are growing, and we can grow them even faster.
Thanks, Catherine. And I can see here that it says that there are questions in the box, but when I'm presenting, I can't see them. So if someone can, maybe Leah can help me read those.
Sure, we have a question that came through in the chat that says, what is the relationship between CSO and aquatic invasive species?
I do not know the answer to that one. Does anyone else know that answer?
I don't know the answer.
I don't know if the person who asked that wants to offer more information on it.
We also have another question that came through in the chat. Was there any consideration to how consolidating several smaller CSO outflows to one or two larger outflows would impact the flow of the receiving water bodies? In particular, how will it impact migrating fish? And this was directed to Catherine Kelly.
Okay. Well, we actually have done that in the past. We have combined CSO outfalls into one outfall. You know, it's a matter of doing the hydraulic modeling and making sure that your system can handle that. You know, you can still relieve at the CSO and not cause backups into people's homes. In terms of how it impacts migrating fish, I'm not qualified to answer that. I'm sorry. You know, I deal with the construction and the engineering of these facilities. But I don't know how, you know, eliminating CSOs will impact migrating fish. I guess from a layman's perspective, maybe if there's one less outfall that's rushing water into the river body and you know, affecting them as they swim by, but I don't know. I don't know
We
if
also
that
have,
answers the question.
there was one more question for you, Catherine Kelly. What or where are future GSI investments being planned?
So we have some GSI designed for other areas of Central Falls as well as Pawtucket. So those are the, you know, Pawtucket and Central Falls is where we're really focusing our GSI investments. The goal of our GSI is really to redirect stormwater runoff that's currently going into our combined system and redirect it to GSI so that we're reducing the hydraulic load on our system and essentially reducing the volume of CSO flow. So I don't, you know, that in a nutshell, that's basically what we're looking at those two cities.
We had another question come through in the chat for Alicia. how far away from the polluting communities were impacted, noted, or studied? I'm sure you were able to say it in your documentary, but this person didn't have a chance yet to watch the documentary.
So I don't have like direct information on that. I did look at Lowell, which is right on the Merrimack River. We talked to John McCone, he's located in Lawrence. And so we did see that those communities were directly affected. Also, we were in Worcester with Stephanie. And so we went to Green Island and we saw that there were issues there as well. So I think that I hope that answers your question. There definitely was, I think they were within close proximity, I would say.
I can add that on the Merrimack, they have 5 wastewater treatment facilities. They have 5 communities with combined sewer, and Newburyport, which is at the mouth of the Merrimack on the Atlantic, was experiencing the brunt of all of that sewage pollution and stormwater pollution on their beaches and their recreational areas, even though they themselves were not contributing. They were receiving everything that happened upstream, and they are miles from the nearest combined sewer overflow location. So the same thing can happen too on the Connecticut River, where you have combined sewer overflows both in Massachusetts and in the state of Connecticut, where the accumulation of that, you can see it at the mouth of the river in Long Island Sound. So even though that's traveling quite far, it has nowhere to go but out.
Yeah.
So another question here says, post CSO overflow event, I was left with the impression that dilution and the river will reduce threats. Are some problems just passed downstream? And what natural river processes clean raw sewage? I can offer a quick example. When the Woonsocket wastewater treatment facility had some issues in their process about a year and a half ago now, they were releasing raw sewage directly into the Blackstone River. And when the public asked DEM, which is the Rhode Island version of DEP for us Massachusetts folks, what is this impact? The answer was, quote, none, because there was the dilution of the river over time. I would love to see more studies on this, and the Blackstone Watershed Collaborative is actually working with the National Park Service, so thank you, National Park Service, to work with the USGS and try and create a study to say, what are the long-term impacts of CSO? Because I don't really know that answer, and I would open it up to the other panelists if you have anything to add on that.
NBC has done some modeling early on in the program to evaluate the impact of CSO, mainly on the shellfish beds in Narragansett Bay. And we know that there was an impact. There were shellfish bed closures that occurred as a result of our CSO, but the CSO volumes are enormous, compared to what might have happened in Woonsocket. So I don't know much about what the volumes were in Woonsockets, but certainly, the impact from Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls combined sewer overflows was enough that it would result in shellfish bed closures. So I think it's just a matter of what volume you're speaking of when you talk about a discharge, versus the volume of the receiving water, and whether the receiving water has enough water to dilute what's coming out.
Yeah, we have the 70s, I think it was 70s, 60s adage of dilution is the solution to pollution, right? Yeah, I think it only goes so far, but another question says, it seems there are important connections between summer heat and rivers as refuge for urban folks to cool off during those times. And do you see a way to push this issue to help accelerate funding, especially grants for combined sewer overflow work?
Yes. Short answer, yes.
Do you want to say anything else about that?
No, I think we got to go for every grant possible and every loan possible. There's like the state revolving fund obviously is the most obvious funding source for water infrastructure. And this question came from Patty too, who is a pro at all things, municipal and planning and funding. So I know you certainly know this list, but there's a lot of other state funding sources that can fund green infrastructure, can fund water pollution abatement projects like the MVP program, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, the MassWorks Infrastructure Grant, things that might be a little less on the nose for sewer pollution, but certainly can be used in conjunction, and overall maybe we can piece together enough funding to make a beach clean.
Thanks, Catherine. I agree, and I think Catherine Kelly also mentioned a lot of those co-benefits and working environmental justice communities. So I think that's important to try and find those solutions and also find diverse funding solutions so that we can get these projects going. I want to clarify what I said before. DEM director said, quote, none on long-term impacts of CSO, not direct that day impacts. So thank you, DEM, for noting that to make sure I speak clearly. So we have this webinar until 2:15. Apologies, it was a weird time to add in a few more minutes there just to make sure we had time for your questions. But does anyone else have other questions that they want to ask here? Feel free to put them in the Q&A. I'll give you an awkward minute to think. If not, I know a lot of folks had to run right at 2. I really appreciate everybody coming and learning more about this issue. I am not advocating for any one policy as a nonprofit 501c3, but Catherine Lang here can always give you your advocacy information, and I do advocate for you to be involved in this issue, to educate yourself, to learn about this, and to talk to your representatives at all levels of government to say that this is important, and whatever means necessary, we need to learn more about it and prioritize combined sewer overflow and addressing that to make sure we have healthy waters for everybody. So thank you so much, everybody, and thank you to all of our panelists and the SNEP Network for hosting us, and have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.